Happy Easter, everybody. A special prayer and blessing for all our seminarians, faculty, staff, and all your families on this most beautiful Easter Sunday. Just a little reflection for all of us today based on what I preached about yesterday for the Easter Vigil. Easter isn't just something we celebrate once a year. It's actually something we celebrate every Sunday. That's our Sabbath, the day when Jesus rose from the dead. Sabbath is a day of rest. And yesterday, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary had to wait through the Sabbath of the day of rest, kind of imposed rest, in order to visit the Lord's tomb and anoint his body. They weren't able to do that on the day he died because it was going to be sundown and they were not permitted to do the work of anointing the body of Jesus as the Sabbath was approaching. Maybe we can identify with Mary Magdalene and the other Mary and all the disciples of Jesus when he died, how they were not able to do what they wanted to do. There was an imposed rest. And I think we can identify with that, can't we? And yet, even though we're not able to do the things we want to do, even though Mary Magdalene and the other Mary and the disciples weren't able to do what they wanted to do, especially to be with the Lord, nonetheless, Jesus was working. He was working behind the scenes. He was working underground. He went into the underworld and freed all of our ancestors from the grips of death and sin, and opened the gates of heaven for all of us. And even though Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were kept from doing the work they wanted to do, nonetheless, what still was strong in their hearts was love. When the Sabbath ended, they were filled with fear, as were all the disciples, because their master had died. And they were afraid that they might suffer the same fate, be killed, because they were associated with their master, Jesus. But Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, their love was stronger than their fear. And so, as soon as they were able to, when the Sabbath was over, they went out to the tomb of Jesus because of their great love for him. And their love was not in vain. They were given the word from the angel that Jesus had risen from the dead and to go and tell other people. And on the way, they met the risen Lord. Today, we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus. We do that from our homes, many of us, and away from the people we want to share this with, the greater church. We want filled churches, not just on Easter Sunday, but all the time. We want to be involved in an active ministry and be involved in a church where people gather. And somehow this imposed Sabbath by this pandemic keeps us from that. But that doesn't mean God isn't at work. God is very much at work underground. And what is he doing in us? Let me tell you what he's doing in me. He's building up a great desire for his church, a great desire for himself, so that when this pandemic is over, and it will end at some point, the zeal that I feel, the zeal I think many of you feel, may bear fruit in great work done through us, but ultimately done by the Lord. For priests and for seminarians, I hope this builds in us a greater desire for our people, a greater love for our people, that we don't just do this for the sake of administering sacraments or religious duties or the pomp and circumstance of liturgies, but rather we do this for love of Jesus and for love of his people. A parish priest is called to serve his people. And for all of us who aren't able to participate in the sacramental life of the church the way we want to, that somehow we feel separated from Jesus because we're not able to participate in the Eucharist and Sacrament of Reconciliation or the other sacraments in the way we want to, realize that the Lord is here. He has risen from the dead. He's conquered all this. And if we allow him to work in us, the hidden Jesus who's at work in our hearts and souls, we can open our hearts to him so that it will build up a desire in us for his presence in the Eucharist, in the sacrament of reconciliation, the sacraments, in our brothers and sisters in the church. And so this is a Sabbath for us, an imposed Sabbath, but a holy Sabbath, a day of rest, but also a day of activity by the Lord. And today, the Lord is inviting us to rest in his presence, to rejoice that he has risen and conquered the world. And when this Sabbath is over, he has work for us to do. May we allow today the Lord to do the work he wants to do in us, so that when it's our time, we can do the work that he wants us to do. And in the meantime, let us rejoice. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, when they heard of Jesus, they were told to go and tell it to his disciples, and then to return to Galilee. But we're not able to proclaim that the Lord is risen, maybe virtually, maybe online, maybe by a phone call, but not in the way that Mary Magdalene and the other Mary did. But the people around us, in our homes, and if we're staying in parishes, they could hear the message. And we might say, but they already know that. I already know that. But it's good to be reminded. Jesus invites his disciples to go back to Galilee, to the beginning, to experience everything and experience it anew in the light of the resurrection. And it's good for us to be reminded, even daily, of Jesus' great love for us, that he died for you and me, and he rose from the dead and shares that life with you and me because he loves us. And we need to be reminded. I need to be reminded. Your family needs to be reminded. Your priests need to be reminded. We need that Galilee moment to go back to the beginning and experience it again in the light of the resurrection. And so today, I say to you, the Lord is risen. Indeed, he is risen. Happy Easter, everybody, and I hope to see you again soon in person. God bless. Bye-bye.